Congressman Markey is no longer Congressman Markey. He is Senator Markey. Now, I can remember, unfortunately, 32 years ago at the Heritage Foundation, being asked if I would debate a young congressman.
That's why I said that, because you told me that.
I think it was on the nuclear freeze. We were not on the same side. What is interesting over the last 32 years, however, is how often I have called on Congressman and now Senator Markey and his staff, Mikhail, and her predecessors, because I believe Congressman and Senator Markey shares a passion that I have. And that is that we have to do much better in trying to push back in advance of our problems dealing with nuclear proliferation. And in this regard, I knew when I called, Congressman Markey would actually oppose his own administration when it came to the agreed framework. I knew when I called Congressman Markey, he would oppose his administration when it came to the Russian nuclear cooperative agreement for some of the very reasons that the Republican speaker laid out. I knew that he would be concerned and oppose dangerous nuclear projects that were commercial and heavily subsidized, like Clinch River. And I know it still. Now, they say bipartisanship is desired, but it's hard to find. And the way you find it is you find people who support things frequently for different reasons. I'd like to think actually on the things we've agreed about, it's for the same reasons. And with that as an introduction, I turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Henry. And by the way, when someone says Senator Markey, I still look over my shoulder. Okay? So I appreciate what you say. No, I appreciate it. 36 and a half years responding to a first name of congressman takes a little bit of time to adjust to. And I thank you, Henry, for all of your work over all of these years. And I just ran over, but I have to run right back. And I know that Ileana was just here, and Ileana and I agree, that we need a standard, and it's a standard that all of us are going to be able to understand and to use as the United States perspective on nuclear technology transfer. And I go all the way back to the 1970s when I was elected in 1976, when the Carter administration, the Ford administration, was going to sell 6 nuclear power plants to the Shah, under the assumption that the Shah would be there forever. So let's just thank God that that wasn't finished before the Shah fell. So what you're trying to do here is just to say, how far into the future do you want to project what the safeguards are going to be for American transferred technology in other countries? We were at war with Vietnam 40 years ago. We weren't at war with Iran. They were our allies. So I guess what you have to say is, what are those standards? And I think the standard should be that if there is going to be a transfer of technology, that there should be an agreement that there's no enrichment of uranium and there's no reprocessing into plutonium. And that's it. Plain and simple. It's not a hard policy, but you can't have one standard for the United Arab Emirates, which I believe is a good standard, which the administration put on the books, and a different one for Vietnam, or a different one for some other country. Because eventually you move to the lowest common denominator. Okay? The other countries say, what are we, fools for signing on to these stronger agreements? How can we have accepted such a standard? So from my perspective, I just think that there has to be a uniformity. It has to be understood. Every country in the world has to know that that's what we stand for. And that's why I agree with Ileana's introduction of legislation on the House side, and I'm going to do the same thing on the Senate side, so that we have this important discussion about what the standards should be. We have to have the debate. because we have to project everything that we do into the long distant future. We have to assume that countries do not stay under the same political regime. And we just want to have an understood context for then how the materials that have been transferred are being treated at that time that regime change occurs. So I just came over just to thank all of you and to just say that Henry and I, was it only the nuclear freeze that we disagreed on? He was so wrong, and you look back in history and you can just see we were right. 10,000 apiece on either side. 10,000 apiece. How many more did you need to say, hey, let's end it? And you know what we needed there? And it's the same issue. It was an actuarial table. Okay? You went from Brezhnev. Then you had Brezhnev die. And then Chernikov took over. Then he died. Then Andropov took over. He dies. And then they got to say, you know what, we'll go to this guy Gorbachev. He's only 54. He's not tied into the old regime. And now we have a chance to negotiate with him, huh? And he's got a new future. He's got a new approach. But it was the actuarial table. It was political change within that country that was for the good, huh? But it can also go the other direction. And we've seen that over and over, which is why there has to be a consistency in the policy. There has to be a consistent set of goals, which we have, that we're putting in place. So I thank all of you for all the work that you do on this issue, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future. Thank you. Thank you. I got to run back.
For those of you who would like a long list of differences, I can meet you out in the hallway. But it won't include any of these.